So many of us have the same story in healthcare, and for most of us, it's not good. You or a loved one needed help, so you did the right thing, you showed up. You filled out the form, you signed into the clinic, or you signed into the emergency room, and then you waited. And you didn't wait just for the doctor, you waited for answers. You waited for that test to come back. You waited for that appointment to be set. You waited for that cancer therapy to be approved by your insurance company. You waited for the system to catch up. And if you're in healthcare, you feel the same pain from the inside. Not because you're lazy or indifferent or careless, because you're waiting for the system to catch up. And I can tell you this because I'm an emergency medicine doctor. And I see the waiting and the pain from the inside as well. Our healthcare system is full of bureaucracy and complexity. From staffing shortages to documentation to waiting for approvals, for regulatory requirements, we're still all waiting for the system to catch up. At the same time, I've got a patient standing right in front of me waiting for a decision. What I want to share with you tonight is that healthcare can move fast, and we want to move fast, and we can do it right. And we can do it without sacrificing safety, ethics, or trust. But before I share with you how we can do it, I have to share with you a number, a brutal number in medicine. It can take 17 years to move from a medical discovery into a clinic or a hospital or your doctor's office. 17 years. That means if you have a discovery that comes out today, a kid in kindergarten would not receive it until they graduated from college. That's not a science problem. It's a systems design problem. See, speed saves lives, but speed with purpose changes those systems. So the question is not, can we innovate in healthcare? The question is, can we flatten that 17-year curve and create a system that moves at the speed of need? Now, I want to share with you why this is so important to me. I've already shared that I'm an emergency room doctor. So I make life and death decisions every day in the emergency department. But I also have another hat. I'm also an Air Force colonel. So over the years, I've deployed to combat zones and war zones across the world, from Iraq to Afghanistan and others. I've trained the most elite combat teams on combat medicine and trauma. And being in those two worlds taught me something really important. The battlefield taught me urgency, and academia taught me evidence. You combine those two together, and you have impact, or innovation. Now, when people think about innovation, they think of maybe a tech center, a tech office, computers on the table, glass walls, a whiteboard, and a prototype. And if it fails, it's all good. Just ship out a new update. But in healthcare, innovation can seem dangerous. Because if you make a mistake, it's not embarrassment, it's harm, or maybe death. Healthcare systems are built for caution, and caution's important. But here's the tension. In time-critical medicine, moving slowly creates its own risk. The time can be the difference between life and death. So I run a center that's focused on medicine under pressure. It's an academic center where time is the enemy and precision matters. It's a world-known innovation center that was focused on and born by my work with the military and with medicine. It improves lives and families every day. It's called the Combat Medical Research Center. And this center brings together all backgrounds, clinicians, scientists, engineers, government, because patients don't really care who owns the problem, they just want the solution. And in this center, we have a ruthless principle that innovation is not about papers, it's not about patents, it's about people. We work with the end in mind, the patient, the soldier, the family. And we don't treat innovation like a buzzword, we treat it like a pipeline. Just like in the military, we take frontline evidence, we move it rapidly, we implement it, and then we scale it in different ways. And we train the people in the combat center to live that pipeline. Residents, medical students, engineers, surgeons, all believing in that same focus. And then we go the next step, and we test those in high-fidelity environments. Real conditions, real pressures. Whether it's information overload, maybe inadequate evidence around x-rays or labs, maybe not enough people to support you that you normally would have, or possibly it's around having handoffs from one team to the next under pressure. And just like the battlefield, the clock does not stop. And then we do something simple, but surprisingly rare. We give them permission to fix what's broken. Not on paper, not in theory, but in the real workflow. In the emergency room, in the operating room, in the ICU. We have them take those solutions where the care is happening. Test them out in those areas, then measure what matters to patients and to healthcare, and then to move the things that are approved or validated along into practice. Everything from AI, robotics, wearables, virtual reality, and new drugs. Because we are proving that innovation and research are not parallel. They are the same mission. That's how we flatten the 17-year curve. And if you want to move medicine faster, you can't separate innovation from care. You need to embed innovation into care. So we believe this fact that impatience for us is not a flaw, it's a fuel. Patients can't wait, and neither should we. Now, the Combat Center was inspired by how we could move battlefield innovation into healthcare in a fraction of the time we see it on the civilian side. And I'll share with you a couple of examples of how that will work in a couple of stories. But I need to frame it first. In the battlefield, if there's an important decision to make, you can't say, you know what, let's get the committee together, give it a couple of weeks, and then we'll figure it out. You got one patient, you got a problem, and you got one chance to get it right. Let me share with you this first story. Early in the wars, we saw some things in our patients we just didn't understand. Our soldiers were surviving explosions and blast injury, not bleeding, not dying, and we were not sure exactly what was going on. Because they looked fine, but they had trouble thinking and remembering and sleeping and functioning. And the mental health side was treated separately as an invisible wound. And then Sergeant Martinez taught me something about brain injury, not as a lecture, by being a patient in front of me. He came through these green doors in our Rock Hospital, that was our trauma center, with his commander. He had just been in an explosion, and he walked in. He wasn't limping. He wasn't bleeding. He was talking, and so I made a mistake. I said, "You're fine. You can go back to battle, back to patrol. No problems here." Thank God he came back a few minutes later. He came back with his commander because he was still confused, he still had a headache, and he was injured. This time we dug in deeper. We looked a little bit harder. I brought in my neurosurgeon colleague as well as my ENT surgeon colleague. We looked at him. We did something that was really radical at the time. We looked in his ears. We looked in his ears, and what happens when a blast wave hits your brain, it can blow out your eardrums. And so we connected the perforated or ruptured eardrums with brain injury. So that bedside observation led to data and studies and a publication in the New England Journal of Medicine, and we changed the way brain injury was cared for. That didn't happen in a lab, and it didn't take 17 years. Second story is around Sergeant First Class Alvin Cash. He went on to receive the Medal of Honor for his heroism in combat. We took care of him and his Army colleagues. Sergeant Cash was in an explosion, and he initially was uninjured. He went back in to rescue his other soldiers, leaving him burned on most of his body. Then he came back to our hospital. He was flown in by helicopter. We took care of them. Sergeant Cash and his soldiers really identified when they came in with their injuries and their lung injury and their burn something in our clinical care that we had not identified. So we moved quickly. We brought in surgeons and burn specialists and lung injury specialists and intensivists and ER docs, and we moved quickly. We moved quickly to rewrite how burn care and burn treatment's done around the world. We changed how we put dressings on burn wounds in war and back home. We changed how we give intravenous electrolytes after burns to resuscitate them and hydrate them after burns. Now, this didn't take years. We did this in weeks. In fact, we did some of this within hours over many countries, changing how we provide burn care. And we did it without abandoning ethics. We did it without doing bad medicine. We moved at the speed of need. Because this is not about just medical innovation. This is about systematic innovation. Speed saves lives, but speed with purpose changes systems and changes practice. So what does this have to do with civilian care? Well, moving obstacles is not just about intelligence and energy and effort. It's about how the system's designed. We treated urgency like a threat, not like a sign or a signal. And every military innovation has a civilian mirror. What saves a life in combat saves a life anywhere in the world. And that's what the Combat Center is focused on. Rural emergency medicine, trauma, disasters, routine emergency medicine of car accidents and falls and hemorrhages and gunshot wounds. Let me give you a couple of examples of this. There's three. Whole blood transfusions. We designed that to take care of combat bleeding from hemorrhage. We now use whole blood transfusions in every trauma center in the United States. Digital therapies on smartphones. It was created for military-related suicide and post-traumatic stress to reduce that or prevent that. Now these applications are being used by teenagers and veterans and many other communities. Concussion therapies. We created therapies around wartime blast injuries. Now they're being used by high school students, weekend warriors, and rock climbers. We are a center that's moving cutting-edge research fast and rigorously. We're a center that's training combat medics together with first responders in our community so they can learn from each other. We're a center that's moving life-saving drugs and devices from cell cultures and chemistry labs to clinics and community hospitals. We are working back from the patient and moving forward with science. As I end, I want to share with you three things that I think we can imagine going forward for a hopeful future. Because this is not about one person, one center, one military story. This is about something that we are just getting started doing. If you could imagine if we treated time as a clinical risk, not as a logistical inconvenience, that we moved at the speed of need, not the bottlenecks of bureaucracy. If you can imagine that we had a digital therapy that prevented suicide that was created 17 years ago, so that 10th grader could have kids today. And if you can imagine that we were using whole blood transfusions to save those lives from those car accidents and those shootings and those falls now and save thousands of patients, and maybe one of those would be on my team now figuring out how to do healthcare innovation. We are flattening this curve. We are moving forward to bring solutions to the patients, not in decades, but in months to years. I used to think that innovation and progress was built around more resources, more time, less constraint, more freedom. Now I believe something completely different. Progress and innovation is forged under constraint, built with urgency, and embraced with shared mission. If we can apply that same mindset to civilian healthcare, we can shorten that road from discovery to care. We can flatten that 17-year arc. And we can bring better healthcare to patients sooner. And most importantly, we can give people back something the healthcare system has been bleeding for a long time: trust. Thank you.